Okay, so continuing on, remember I was just saying that the imagery will often refer to the domestic so that we can understand it because it's familiar sights and sounds to us. Okay, so I've circled a few things here as well. We've got a shift here. The forest was closed. Okay, so there's still this idea of mystery as this persona is walking through the landscape. It's not all beautiful and warm and inviting and colourful. There's also some elements of an uneasiness and a fear, which is what nature is all about. It's not all going to be comforting and restorative. Some of it will provoke a fear. We also have some beautiful colour motif, rose-coloured sandstone, bacon redness of bark. There's again that reference to bacon, the domestic things that we can relate to. Smooth wet trunks of caterpillar green. All right, all of these motifs are repeated so that we get again this accumulation of the beauty. We have some olfactory here as well. The tart is bush smoke, a sweet rot. A reference to this idea here that his heart's flapping like a lizard. Okay, so he is exerting himself as he's walking through this forest. It is not a leisurely walk. He's actually like an explorer. Remember here we have a reference to art again, the Pre-Raphaelites. The Pre-Raphaelites really evoked this beautiful, grand, rich colours, which he's referring to that are in the forest. All right, we've got the personification of rain shading to silence, the cicadas, again the reference to the sounds of the cicadas like the warming of an engine. It's like an electricity substation. Okay, man-made descriptions to evoke the natural. All right. And then at the end, what it was all for, I forgot. There's a few references to what this could mean, but it's almost to me like he's been walking and he's so immersed in this world and this beauty and this landscape that he is overwhelmed. All right, so come into this idea, beauty, the restorative nature, again, the senses. All right, we'll leave 24 poems to last. Flames. Flames, as we know, is quite different to the other ones because it is much more of that tension between the man-made and the natural. So I said to my class a fair bit, if you are going to focus on a couple of your poems, I would include this one because it provides a good contrast of how, the tension between man-made and the natural environment. So we have some lovely, not lovely really, but powerful pieces of imagery. The smoke of different fires of a row finger spread and dragged to smudge the rubbish dump always burning. All right, so that real dirty, gritty imagery. And it's this real sense of despair. It's always burning, this compound adjective of always. And continued on, driven like stakes into the earth, more despair. Okay, the stakes, it's hammered in. The air wobbles in a cheap mirror. There's a fog over the hot sun. We all know that feeling of looking into the horizon when it's really hot and the air is wobbling. And here, when you're linking it to some of the smells of burning, it's almost like an image of hell, of this rubbish dump. Again, hell is also referenced here, or a grave. We come to a landscape of tin cans, of cars like skulls. Despair is being built upon throughout this poem. The sour smoke, the hell in devils might poke through our souls. Okay, again, all of these are alluding to hell. Humans produce waste that has ushered this existence of this physical place of misery that we can't actually get rid of. The smell is huge. Such a simple statement, but it's really powerful. The tons of rotten newspaper and greyed cuds of cloth. All right, another reference to an art piece down here, the Raft of the Medusa. It is also, it's also very much of this idea of somebody on a raft that is calling for help out in the middle of nowhere. If you can imagine a pile of bodies and somebody standing on top waving a white flag in the hopes that somebody can help. All right, so again, it's almost this plea through this allusion to this art piece. The demon with the long barge pole, mythical ferryman of Hades. So we've got some Greek mythology there too. So not only is Gray using biblical, he's also using mythological and artistic allusions to accumulate this idea of despair and lack of hope in this rubbish dump. However, when we get to the end of the poem, he has left it on in some form of hope in this last stanza. The horse laughs, which again is a horseman of the apocalypse. That's quite dark, but Chopin, which is a musician. The sounds of the curtains lifting one time to a coast of light. Okay, so there's this image of hope right at the end. Yes, we have destroyed this landscape in this rubbish dump, but there is still hope. Very much the tension between human habitation and the natural world in this one. And finally, let's have a quick look at 24 poems, which surprisingly is one that a lot of people refer to, even though it's quite long, but it's quite simple in the way he has divided up these 24 experiences that we can relate to. So very much this idea of the appreciation of the ordinary that he's looking at. And you guys have all got the table that references each of them, but I've put it on here as well. So the idea of contemplating, and he's using the idea of water and violin, water in a rock pool, this calmness that he's referring to with the allusion to music. Here we have this domestic imagery with the natural. A sea is a glass brimming under the tap, so getting a glass of water in the morning, idea of solitude and peace. And then we have 4 a.m. in the morning, a truck drives past the house and there's this sense of disturbance. Okay, very simple, but a truck changes down is something we can all picture in our head, hear it in our head. And then looking at the flowers in the bush like milking sheds, this real admiration of this idea at dusk, this domestic imagery used again. Despair, drying her eyes outside the hilltop street, hiding in the wind. There's crying there. Okay, the transience of the wind, there's a sadness in that one. Then we have a Reiwa hotel in the rain, reading early in the soapy yellow light. Patience, sitting there waiting for a train. Frustration, we have hot nights in the yard when you tighten the tap because it's dripping and the mosquitoes are buzzing around your head. We all know that. Frustration. There's a reference to being enlightened here through this idea of rain, and it's reminding Gray of a cathedral, the beautiful visual imagery of the shadows of a cathedral with the rain. Hope, magpies on the veranda, this idea of this interactions between people seeking shelter and attention with each other. Then we have prayer. Again, prayer, or whenever Gray references rain or water, it's often a real spiritual element to it. I sit and watch the rains falling, its eyes closed, real sense of prayer. Then we have a sense of relief after a couple have had an argument. The water, again, in the shower is making her feel cleansed after this argument. We have a switch now to anxiety. Okay, the pacing of the crows around potentially on the back porch. Hope and life again, a reference to a hospital room. Thoughts of a slight breeze in the curtains and this reflective idea of living. Vulnerability, still almost this idea of the hospital when you're bringing your mother in and she's so light that she's going to vanish in the morning. A reference to darkness in all of us, the shadowy sides of everything. New beginnings, the growth of flowers in the heath, they open their eyes to the morning. Another reference to spirituality through this wonder and amazement at the universe, the moon, the bay of night and stars. Wonder is again further on here with this idea of the tree roots walking. Okay, this restorative idea of the personified nature walking around this ancient earth. Then we go to a bit more sort of isolation. Late afternoon sun in the back of the shed, cornered and still. It's a real eerie tone to that one. Coming to some impatience. Using this idea of the domestic again, the piano lid propped. It's waiting for somebody to play its story, play its music. We have some dread of this idea of having to go to work in the morning, open the door and the gunshot of the morning. Worked all day, wounded. We can all relate to that one too. And then coming to the end of the poem, he really sort of wraps it up with this idea of renewal. Okay, the breeze, the pure note and prayer, the pious sunset. And finishing with this idea of the light and the dark, the white neck and the black hair. Light and dark is a real reference to this idea of the life cycle. Light has paused on its endless journey. All right, so as we know, 24 Poems is all about appreciation of the ordinary experiences in our life, and how through that appreciation we can stop and take a moment, live a bit more in the present and really value the things that we have. And he's done that all the way through this poem. Okay, so there's the 6 poems. Hopefully that's a bit of a help, just to remind you what the overarching themes are, and to remember that in each of those you're only going to want to remember 3 or 4 quotes and ones that really stick with you, so that it's much easier for you.